Our scenes of intense combat are consuming the south of the Gaza Strip. The key city of Khan Younis, once deemed a safe zone for residents, has been surrounded by Israeli troops, following clashes described as some of the fiercest since the war began almost 2 months ago. The Israeli Air Force says it has taken out 250 Hamas targets in the last 24 hours, as part of efforts to cripple the group's military infrastructure. The IDF is calling it the third phase of operations. With the city of Khan Younis fast resembling a wasteland, the United Nations warns no place in the Strip is safe. Many residents have moved into shrinking pockets of so-called safe zones in the besieged enclave's south. But according to UNICEF, these are just tiny patches of barren land. Meanwhile, hospitals in the area are grappling with ever more injured residents. Doctors Without Borders say supplies have reached critically low levels at one hospital in central Gaza. While the Israeli offensive deepens, the army says it has not abandoned its goal of rescuing more hostages in Gaza. It's calling on the International Red Cross to be granted access to those who are still being held captive.
As the IDF expands its operations to dismantle Hamas in Gaza, we have not lost sight, not for one moment, of our critical mission to rescue our hostages, to do everything in our power to bring our hostages home.
For more, Sarah Coates joins us live from Tel Aviv. Sarah, we just heard there, not losing sight of the goal of rescuing hostages who are still in the hands of Hamas. And the numbers are about more than 100 still in captivity right now. With Israel ramping up its offensive now, what are the chances of them ever actually being released?
Hi there, Wei-Su. Well, look, this is exactly why these families are so concerned here in Israel. That number overnight has gone up to 138 captives still being held in the Gaza Strip. And we do need to remember this has been now 2 months, more than 2 months in captivity. There's absolutely no sign of their whereabouts, their welfare, and they haven't even had a visit from the International Red Cross. Now, there is a lot of concern that this ongoing military operation, which is getting deeper and deeper inside the Gaza Strip, will actually harm these people rather than harming these Hamas fighters. There are concerns that where Hamas is operating is where it has these captives hidden. And look, this was one of the things that these families and also recently released captives spoke to this war cabinet about yesterday, with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly telling people at that meeting that it is not possible to get these people out anytime soon. And look, that was met with absolute fury. And these people say that Benjamin Netanyahu should step down, saying he can barely run a meeting, let alone a country. Now, we've also heard on Army radio a little earlier this morning, an unnamed source came out to say that it may take more than a month of military pressure on Hamas to be able to open some sort of a truce window, which would then see these hostages released. So certainly a lot of concern on the ground. And look, there are also some very concerning reports with regards to sexual abuse and rape that these hostages have endured. This is coming from survivors and also witnesses down in the south on October 7. Many of these details absolutely far too graphic to go into. But look, we have heard from US President Joe Biden. He is calling on the international community to condemn without exception. And we've also heard a condemnation from the United Nations last week. But look, Israel says this is too little too late, saying that the voices of Jewish women must also be listened to. And look, Hamas continues to deny any of this happened. But as we've heard from these survivors, there is a lot of overwhelming evidence.
Oh, Sarah, the release of hostages, part of a truce, a 7-day truce that also included increased aid being allowed into the Gaza Strip. Now, since that truce collapsed last week, what challenges have aid organizations been facing to get help those who clearly still need it?
Wei-Su, that list just keeps growing. Right now, there are more than 80% of the population inside the Gaza Strip. They are internally displaced. The United Nations is calling the situation apocalyptic. And these aid groups that are working on the ground down in the Gaza Strip say there's basically no point for them to continue because they simply don't have the means to do so. Now, what we do know is that in addition to these growing numbers of dead, wounded, and also people buried under the rubble, there are no trucks coming in, basically less than 100 yesterday. And when you put that into perspective, like I've been saying throughout these last 2 months, before this war, there were more than 500 trucks going through on a daily basis. And there's simply not enough to supply these people with basic things, food, water, and also medicine. Now, we do know there are barely any hospitals working inside the Gaza Strip right now. And Doctors Without Borders down in the south, they say that there are just so many casualties flowing into these hospitals that it is simply they're simply unable to treat these people. So certainly very, very concerning.
Thanks. Sarah Coates reporting live from Tel Aviv.